Hey guys, what's up? This is Dan here with PIAV and welcome to my review of The Division beta. The beta for Tom Clancy's The Division has recently ended, and I thought I'd share a few of my thoughts based on what I found about the game, things that I liked, things that I didn't like. Of course, this is only a review of the beta itself, and I can't really speak about what's going to be happening in the full game. Things are subject to change, as with, the nature of pretty much every beta, and that is the point of the beta, to try and playtest and see what things we like and see what things we didn't like. So let's get into it. Created by Massive Entertainment and published by Ubisoft, Tom Clancy's The Division is an action RPG shooter set in a devastated remains of New York City. Although I wasn't entirely sure what the story of the game was when I started playing, a little bit of research has let me discover that a deadly virus was released in New York on Black Friday, and within a day, basically, all hell broke loose. Society descended into chaos. All the basic services like water, electricity failed, and basically everything just turned into a little bit of a nightmare. With society at its knees, The Division is a group of special agents which are deployed into New York City to try and stop this virus and to try and save humanity from itself. I must admit as well, I really love the tagline of The Division, as in the unit, The Division, which is when society falls, we rise. And I think that's a really good indication of what the type of character that you're trying to play as. The fact that you are this guy who looks like everyone else, and there's loads of yous. There's a lot of these agents scattered about who are just mixed in with the normal populace. And it's just this wonderful, beautiful sentiment of, when all else fails, we are the ones that rise up and try and save the day, which I really, really like. First of all, I'm going to mention that this beta, which I played on the Xbox One, was actually a 26GB download, so it is a huge, huge file. But not only, I didn't once feel as if, the file size was too big. The world that you're presented with is absolutely beautiful. The atmosphere is tremendous. The size of the map, although in the beta was quite small, but I do feel as if the entire download was basically what the full game would have been, and they've just boarded off certain areas which you can't go. However, when you do get to some of these areas, you can tell that the areas beyond the boundaries are still fully detailed, and it just really made me want to go and explore these things in the new game. The game starts where you're getting dropped off via helicopter on the edge of the Hudson River in a small base. Your first mission is to go and activate a base of operations which is just outside Madison Square Garden. Now, we all fully expected that this game would not be a one-to-one representation of New York. However, it does feel vast enough, and even traveling, a seemingly small distance in terms of the beta actually took a little bit of a while, and there was a couple of things that happened along the way. You would find bandits, you would find normal civilians who would just come up trying to ask for help. Of course, you can choose whether or not you wish to help them, either by giving them, some medical care, a drink, or if you're not feeling entirely helpful, you can just raise your gun to them and off they go. Once you arrive at this base of operations, there is a huge firefight taking place outside. For those who have watched the E3 trailers or the E3 playtest, this is basically that part of the playtest that you're doing now. So there's a big fight between the Division forces and some rebel factions, some looters, some rioters. Once you've dispatched of them, you go in there and you actually take control of this base of operations. One of the really good things that I think will be great in the main game, and this is something that I think they alluded to really well here, is the fact that you can level up this base. So there are three different wings. There's a security wing, a medical wing, and a tech wing, and each of them, I'm sure, will progress as you progress through the levels of upgrades, will unlock more and more useful things for your character. However, in the beta, you could only really upgrade the medical part of it, but it was a really good insight into some of the things that you could be able to do. So once you kind of done this part of it, what you were then able to do is, out in the real world, there will be certain encounters that take place. So it could be, just going to a certain base and clearing out a group of people, rescuing hostages and things like that. And each one of these missions, these encounters, would actually give you a certain amount of points to go and upgrade the certain aspects of your base of operations. So there's one where I had to rescue a group of hostages, and in that gave me a certain amount of medical tech points. And when I went back to my base of operations, I could then upgrade my medical wing to, you know, have a clinic or something like that, which would then better benefit me throughout the rest of the game. After which, you were then asked to go and clear out Madison Square Garden, which is nicely situated just over the road. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting in this, and this is probably the biggest thing that really makes me want to play the full game, is the level of detail in some of these landmarks. So the Madison Square Garden is, of course, a major sports music venue in New York City, and when you go into there, you can really tell that this world or this building has been meticulously recreated in this game. And although Madison Square Garden isn't one of my most favourite New York landmarks, the one thing that just really made me like appreciate what this new game's going to do is if I can go to some of my favourite New York landmarks, such as Rockefeller Center, such as Times Square, and it really made me yearn for what that is going to look like. As I say, Madison Square Garden is a beautiful, beautiful building, and inside this game, it is extremely well recreated. You go across the basketball court, you go up into the stands, you move across, you know, the high rafters and stuff like that, and you can have a look around, and it really feels real in a way. And I think that's one of the haunting reminders of this game, is that, like, you know, quite possibly this is just around the corner, in, you know, if you believe in such doomsday prophecies. But as I say, it was really, really well made. It was, like, visually wise, and I think moving into the main game, when we can start going to some of these other locations, I absolutely cannot wait for. So once you fight your way through Madison Square Garden, you have a showdown on a roof with the leader of these enemies. After you've destroyed him, you basically secure Madison Square Garden, and then this is where you get a hell of a lot of points to go and upgrade your building, like your base of operations, as I mentioned before. As far as the beta in terms of the story goes, that is pretty much as far as it goes, really. So before we move any further, I just want to have a quick talk about the gameplay. Now that we've discussed the story and the world that, you know, you are inhabiting in this beta, the gameplay is actually pretty good. It does have the whole, you can tell it's more of an RPG than a shooter, and even just in the aesthetics of it, like when you shoot someone, like the damage numbers come up, things like that. It's very much, you know, akin to Borderlands or Destiny in that way. If you have them settings turned on, I'm sure you can turn them off in the settings. The guns feel, you know, the shooting does feel pretty good. The cover system's really nice. You don't feel as if you are too overpowered as a character. There was a lot of times where I did find myself getting destroyed, or, you know, being really close to death, which actually made the experience of, you know, me feeling alone, or me feeling that I am not this superhero, I'm just a normal guy. And I think that's one of the main, I guess, feelings of this game, is that you are just you know, and you're not the best person in the world, and each fight is kind of a struggle in its own way. And when you come up against larger encounters, you do have to kind of use your brain a little bit, and you can't just run in guns blazing. One thing I was a little bit unhappy with was the menu system. So of course, with it being an RPG, there's a hell of a lot of like looting and levels and customization of your character and your guns, and I felt that the pause menu was a little bit clunky at times, and I didn't quite understand how to, you know, change clothes, or when I was looking at the different stats of my armor, like which one was actually better, because some had, it was a higher level but was actually worse, and it was a little bit confusing. Once again, I'm not saying that this is a bad part of the game, it's just something that'll take a little bit of getting used to. One cool thing is that when you bring up the map, it kind of does this cool expanding visual thing where it just appears on the floor, and that's really, really cool. A little part of me was like, you could have just had a normal map, but the more I did it, the more the novelty didn't wear off, which is kind of strange, and I just love the map. Now for me, this game really opens up when you go into multiplayer. I played with one of my friends, Brian, and one of the great things about it, and especially with, I know this has been an issue with the current generation of consoles, is that it's so easy now to join a game, and that's always been my biggest like issue with the new the new generation of consoles is that it just seems like joining a game in a lot of games is just a hassle, and you've got to go through menu systems and things like that. But we had absolutely no problem in joining each other's game, which is great. Of course, experiencing all that we've experienced so far, multiplayer is a hell of a lot better. It's a lot more fun. You can feel that when you're talking about tactics and things like that, that they actually come into play. You can flank certain enemies and things like that, and it really opens up the amount of tactical options that you have got. And I just think any game like this would have been disastrous if it wasn't for the multiplayer aspect. And even though you are playing with more people, it actually doesn't feel as if, you know, yous are better in that way. You know, yous do still feel as if yous could go into an encounter and be killed. And again, I think that's great. I think you start using your own wit, and you've got to start using your own tactics and things like that. And it is definitely a plus in my book. But this is the most important part. This is the most impressive part of the beta, and that is the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone is unbelievable. It gave me a lot of memories of DayZ and H1Z1 as you're walking through this cordoned off, contaminated zone where PvP is enabled. However, in some cases PvP is not encouraged. There was times where we'd be walking through an alleyway and we would face off against another group of survivors, and instead of just being guns blazing, we actually had a little bit of a standoff. You could use the emotions to let the other team know of your intentions, and even though you can try and be as accommodating and as nice as possible, a lot of the times it did resort to just a straight up firefight. But it was great because you never knew what was around the next corner, and even though you're trying to fight off AI enemies and trying to find the higher value loot in these systems, in this area, you could then just get it took off you by any douche with a sniper rifle, which I'm sure some people don't like, and I'm sure as we move through the game and the game comes out, that will be balanced out a hell of a lot. But it was a hell of a lot of fun coming across some unsuspecting survivors and trying to gun them down. So the point of the Dark Zone is to go around and get some loot that does not appear in the normal game. Of course, you can attack other enemies, other player characters, and take their loot. There was some times where you would be fighting AI and then humans will come in and help, or you'll be fighting AI and humans come in and try and get you as you are distracted. One thing that's worth noting is any of these items or loot that you find in the Dark Zone has to be extracted. Now, the reason why they have to be extracted is because this is a decontamination zone, and if you try and just walk out of the door without properly extracting them, they do just get destroyed straight away. You do get a warning about this, but it was something that we didn't notice like as we were playing, and we lost a lot of stuff. To do the extraction, what you'd have to do is go to specific areas on the map which are usually guarded by AI enemies, and then you call in an extraction, and there is an arbitrary wait time where the extracting helicopter comes in, but it does get really exciting, as I say, because there are AI enemies there that you've got to hold off, and human characters often wait in these areas because they know that other human characters are going to come here to try and extract all the goodies. So there is a little bit of excitement while you know there's only 15 seconds left, and you know that you have to run and be out in the open trying to get your hard-earned loot on this helicopter, and just any bullet would just completely end that and ruin your day. And finally, I just want to talk about the audio, the things that means the most to me, and it was unreal. The guns sounded heavy. There was a nice amount of crack to them, and the reverb ambiances of the streets and the tunnels and all that. Were just absolutely sublime. There's such a level of realism in this that I absolutely love, and I felt that if they didn't do that, and if they took a different approach to the sound design, that a lot of the atmosphere of the game would have wore off. I think real is the best word to describe this. It's very accurate. As I say, the reverbs and things like that for the bullets and the guns are just absolutely absolutely sublime. What I like as well is the understated use of music. You know, the atmosphere tracks like the wind and, you know, just the desolation of New York is basically the music in itself. Yes, there are some orchestral music parts which kind of swell, and, you know, when you go into like firefights, there is a much more like music driven sound there. However, I feel at times that just when you're exploring through the city and you're walking through the streets, just the sound of the wind and the sound of like nothing is just so gripping, and I absolutely adore it.
No reason to get physical.
So finally, my last like overall thoughts is that I just cannot wait. I cannot wait for the new game, for the full game. And, you know, I wasn't overly excited for it when it was announced, and for the very little that I saw of it, we just played the beta because we were lucky enough to get a beta key, and I think it's absolutely delivered what I felt that this beta should. And it's really just an unbelievable experience. And as I say, you play it with friends, and it's just gonna be so good. It's exactly the type of game that I want. Being a huge fan of New York City anyway, I was just engrossed when walking around the town and just, you know, looking and not necessarily doing anything, just exploring and seeing what was down certain streets. That was what I loved about going to New York when I went in real life. Definitely a game you should check out. I think it's March 8th, I believe, that it's coming out on. I might be completely wrong. But it's going to be a game that I am absolutely going to play, and hopefully, like, I would advise you guys to pick it up. If not, go and watch some footage of the beta, because it is absolutely tremendous. But this has been Dan with PIAV. This has been my review of The Division beta. Thank you so very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you soon.